actually wanted to really start with today are more for just communication with students. It's one of the hardest things that we have right now. I mean, usually it used to be that we would walk into our classroom and then like, bam, they just show up, talk to them. Great. You didn't have to really seek them out so much. And even when you did, email was fine. Now everything is getting buried in people's emails because we're all home and that's the only way to communicate. So a couple of different ways that I've communicated over the years. One thing that I use all the time, and I use this all the time, I use this in whatever learning management system I'm using and whatever communication method I'm using, is Bitmojis. I actually have a big problem with it. I sometimes will text people only with Bitmojis for an entire conversation, and I've had friends say to me, please stop doing that. But students love it. It gives you, it makes you, it shows them that you have humor. It shows them that you're a person. It kind of, it makes it so that very often they'll feel a lot more comfortable with you. And, I typically, especially in the classroom, I'm a pretty strict teacher. And, I'm a strict, I follow the rules, the kids have to follow the rules, but at the same time, I do stuff with like Bitmojis and things like that. So they know that I have a sense of humor and how much I enjoy having them around. I'll make Bitmojis into magnets. I use them as stickers. I've made them into stickers. But right now, of course, we can't, those types of analog ways of communication aren't going to really help. But you can use Bitmojis in any email communication that you have, or whenever there's a way that you can attach a file. I know in my school district, we use Canvas Learning Management System, and very often I'll use it in little feedback boxes where you can attach a file, and I'll just attach the picture and the picture just shows up. Those of you that use Remind to communicate with students, which is another app I'll kind of come on into again later, that's another one that it will end up texting the student anyway, so you can text them a Bitmoji. You'd be surprised. They're excellent for feedback. They're excellent when you're ending a conversation or starting a conversation with a student, and just to kind of lighten the mood. And so I use those a lot. One thing that many teachers are finding is a big problem right now, and one thing I noticed from somebody's comment in the Excel sheet, it's engaging students, getting them to want to do stuff, and communicating with them. Like Charity mentioned in the very beginning, in the beginning of next school year, that's going to become even more of an issue if we aren't starting the year in the room. How do you communicate with students you've never seen before? How do you start off that communication, that relationship, where it's more than just a name on a screen, that you actually have a relationship with the person? And these are the little ways of doing that, using things like Bitmoji. And another app to bring up that I will sometimes use in situations like this is Snapchat. I personally do not like it, actually, as a personal way. I don't really contact my friends that way too much or anything like that, but I use it with my students because that's their technology. That's what they love. And over the years, I've had study groups with students over Snapchat. I have group chats with students that I still have going for years with students, and they'll kind of come back into that little group and bring it back up. And I know I have a group chat from 3 years ago that kind of got brought up again, since all those kids are now seniors and they're missing out on their senior year, and we were able to start up that group chat again. So and it just comes down to using their tech, using the things that it's more, what they use for fun, what they use for communication. I won't necessarily use it for the same type of communication and the same type of fun, but I'll use it to communicate with them. And, first of all, they love it because they just think that, oh my God, the teacher uses Snapchat? Oh my God. And they freak, they start to realize after a while you don't use it for anything else but talking to them. But it still is a really great, way of communicating. A couple other programs to use, so to getting a little bit away from communication. I did mention I was going to say something about Remind. Many people use Remind to communicate with their classes, but that's one, even if you use a learning management system of other sorts, I find that it's a really good one to keep using, just because it goes really just straight into the text messages, and you can kind of save the fake phone number of the other person, and sometimes just makes it a little bit easier to communicate for people that are just a little bit more into text. Looking at a couple of the comments that people brought up of things that they want to learn, authentic assessments. You know, when we're in the classroom with students, we can make sure that they're first that they're understanding what we're showing them. We can also kind of make sure that they're doing the steps the correct way. And when you're not in the room, it's kind of unnerving because you don't know what you're necessarily missing. You don't know what they, you know, what they need from you. Honestly, Inq-ITS is actually a really great resource for that, because it's as authentic as you get. It uses inquiry, but it has recs in order, and I always suggest using recs, and we can go into that later. But it has recs to make sure that they're on the right pathway. It has, you know, and if they mess up, recs kind of starts to learn what they need, and you know, to focus on. But your ink blotter that you get, you can see which aspects of the content they're not getting. You can kind of really see if they're not understanding, you know, like writing a hypothesis, or what the independent variable is versus dependent variable. You can really see the aspects that you have to focus on. And I find that to be, you know, in any sort of resource that you're going to use, I find that that's important, is knowing what they don't know and what you need to focus on. You know, I don't only want to know a percentage of questions they got right. That's not going to help me as much. But if I can see the specific questions that they're having more difficulty with, and you know, even easier with Inq-ITS, how it shows the type of question, so I can really see, oh my God, they keep on having issues with the independent variable, as opposed to having to look at specific questions and saying, oh, that's an independent variable question, you know, and then kind of going back and tagging those. A couple of other programs that I've used for authentic assessment, what I find as authentic, I guess, as you can get really without a simulation basis, would be something like Edpuzzle or Nearpod. Nearpod has these embedded virtual reality elements now, and 360 video elements now. So it has a lot of ways that you can assess that go with different ways of thinking. You know, it'd be great if we could, and we can, but if we can more often find out what they don't understand without using like multiple choice. Okay, you know, when you have multiple choice, right away, you know, you're adding a stress level in there. You're adding words that they can confuse. Sometimes you don't know if it's that they knew the topic or if it's because they got confused by the other answer choices. And you know, we should have open question, open-ended questions. Then you have to go in there and read each one individually. And it's hard when you're managing online classes to have the time to go in and read each of these sometimes long worded answers. But a program where like Inq-ITS, it actually does that aspect for you. So you can kind of go in and now get the bird's eye view and see, oh, these are the specific aspects that they don't understand. I'm going to focus on those. One thing that people really don't realize until they're doing it is running a class online is not easier, and it doesn't take less time. People always just kind of assume, I guess, when you're working from home or then you're doing things online, that there's less to it, or it's less complex. Everything takes a couple more steps often, because it's like I said, you can't just like call out to your students and say, oh my God, I forgot, that's going to be due on Friday. No, you have to actually now make the effort to send something that goes out to them, that they get the information. Everything just takes a couple more steps. So the more that you can do in order to streamline, it's not being lazy, it's not taking the easy way out, it's being focused with your priorities, and it's focusing more on actually reading those, understanding what those kids don't get, and then redirecting and creating a new lesson in order to make sure that they get that information, as opposed to having to take all of that time reading each of their answers for a lab or whatever, where now by the time you're done grading that, they've already moved on the topic, and you can't even increase what they need for, like, give them more support for the topic that they didn't get. So time, it's amazing how long it can take to grade in a lot of these labs and a lot of these things. So you really want to focus on things that have aspects of use technology to do some form of the grading for you, some form of the maintenance for you and the management for you, so that you are there more for the overarching effect, so you can kind of see what the students aren't getting and what you need to support more with more resources. And you can really more now focus on the students and them as individuals, which is a really big, it should be a big focus of your time right now. When students aren't doing work in your class, you don't know right now whether they just start giving up and not doing anything, or sitting there playing video games all day, or if they have a family member that's sick. Those of us that teach high school, they may have to work in order to support, the family. So we don't necessarily know what's going on, but what we do know is that everybody's going through something right now, and we need to really be there for them as people and as mentors, because our jobs are not only to teach the content, and we all know that. There's a lot more to what we do than talking about the topic that we teach. So that should really be a big focus, for the rest of this year, because that's what they need. We don't know, and we've talked about this before, we don't know how long this is going to go. We don't know if this is going to be we don't know if we're going to start the year off like this. A lot of people are assuming that. We don't know if we're going to finish off next year like this. I mean, we really don't know. But all we can deal with is what we have in front of us, and the fact that they will really need that social, that SEL, that social, emotional learning aspect that they're missing out on in the classroom. And that's, the more that we can make our teaching applicable, the easier it'll be to engage them. So just to kind of go back to the creating engaging lessons online. I think they're saying an engaging environment. Oh, okay. Yeah. So to creating an engaging lesson online, one thing that I've been doing, at least for this year during the pandemic, is focusing the topic on, focusing what I'm teaching on the pandemic, on what they're going through, because they're curious about it, they want to know about it. So right away you get that engagement. And you're just basically piggybacking off of the engagement that people have to know what's going on right now. And I used it for evolution. It's amazing. I was actually able to apply it a lot. And now for the human body, which is of course easier. And I've gone into a lot of data, understanding and interpreting data by using the information from the data being produced. And interpreting graphs and tables. One thing we as teachers have an amazing capability of doing is taking whatever we want and bringing it right back to the topic that we're teaching. And we just have to try to figure out a way to do that with the current events. The more that you take those current events and make them topical and make them part of the content, the more that they're just going to automatically be engaged. And the other thing is projects. They can collaborate. They can use online tools. Google Docs, Google Slides is really great because you can basically make a Google Slides into a website. And you can have them split slides. You know, you 4 members of the team, everybody does their own slide. So there's accountability, but it's forcing them in a way to talk to each other, to socialize, it's you know, right away you can't do all of it in like one sitting, so they have to kind of, you know, do portions of it. So that's another really great way to use this time to teach them other skills. You know, that's why I was teaching them a lot with data science, like, you know, interpreting data. You know, we can use the topic, the current events right now, to teach a lot of those skills that we really often have a lot of time fitting in the classroom. I don't know, Charity, I figure I should leave some time for questions. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. That would be great. People, I was wondering, just generally, if you don't mind talking just a little bit, how are you doing daily meetings with your students weekly? Like, how are you structuring your time in regards?
Well, a lot of that was determined by the district, and a lot of the teachers are going to find that that's going to be an aspect of it. You're going to have flexibility within that. But with my district, they wanted for us to make sure that we had a certain amount of synchronous time each week for each class. And then, you know, my Mondays and Tuesdays are for synchronous classes. And then Wednesday and Thursday are for support time, basically like office hours, okay. Class specific. And then there's 2 times of the week where every teacher, it's like it's extra help, but it's in your email. So basically everyone, you're just supposed to check our email a couple times in that period of time. And by making the schedule the way they did, it actually was really great, because you know that when you're going to do a synchronous class with a student, they're not going to have things scheduled with someone else.
Yeah.
Also, I teach an ICT class. So I have a co-teacher, and we both did our schedules separately, and we ended up with the same times for the class that we teach, because they gave us a very, like, you know, like a worksheet almost to use to determine your schedule. But like within that, you still, of course, have some flexibility. We have a lot of diversity in our school district. A lot of students don't have their own devices, or some have to go into a parking lot in order to get Wi-Fi. So they really did not encourage us. Actually, they kind of discouraged us from doing video conferences for those synchronous, at least not for every week and every time. I know I've done a couple synchronous ones, but just honestly as check-ins, so that we can like see each other's faces and like say hi to each other for a second and then get to work, you know, somehow else. But like they didn't want it to be like where kids that didn't have tech felt very left out. So they didn't really want for people to do it like that every week. But you know, there's nothing wrong with some scheduling it like once in a while or something like that in those situations. Like how I did a Zoom conference with a couple classes this week, told them way in advance. And of course, and you can't really, if a student can't show up for a synchronous class, if you have it scheduled, you have to also remember that they could be having a lot of things going on right now. You know, the biggest thing I keep on saying to my students, and honestly myself in a way, I like them to view the work that I'm giving them to do, the assignments, as almost like a respite, like as something other to do, you know, because you start to binge watch the same show for an entire day. And like I say this to them all the time, in theory, that sounds like it would be like the greatest day ever. It'd be like the greatest week ever, because you can do whatever you want and sit in your pajamas all the time and watch TV shows. But you start getting depressed. So like by having little breaks within to do something else will help to keep you sane and keep you happy for longer. So I keep on just telling them, like, none of the assignments I give should take a crazy amount of time, you know, 15 minutes. Give yourself a second to take a break, do the 15-minute, you know, thing. It's usually you know, applicable to what's going on right now. And I'm getting like excellent. Most of my students are doing all the assignments. So like I said, I'm not trying to keep it applicable. I'm trying not to give them a crazy amount to do. But having everybody be the same place at the same time is really helpful. When I don't have them visually as a video conference like this, I have them in a chat room. And so in Canvas, which is the learning management system that our district uses, we're able to embed a chat room into our course. So I have them there, and we're like in the chat room talking to each other. There are some kids I'm hearing from all the time now that I never would hear their voice in the classroom unless I went right over to them and talked to them individually. There's some kids that are thriving like this because they don't have the disruption in the classroom. I have a couple of kids that have asked me for extra, this was really kind of cool. Do you have another article like that?
Yeah.
Because they had the time, they are a little bored, maybe, but they're interested in it, and they're not getting, when you're not being forced, and it's not, you kind of want to do it a little bit more.
Yeah. So we have a quick question, Amanda.
Yeah.
They want to know what courses you teach.
The living environment and chemistry in high school. So, and then marine biology right now. I teach in the marine biology elective. So it's one of the reasons why I have the fish.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you have, you've been a classroom teacher for 9 years? Is that right?
Okay. Yep. And I'm in New York State, we have master teachers. It's like a fellowship. It's kind of hard to get. So I'm one of the New York State master teachers, and I am a recent PhD in educational neuroscience.
Just so wonderful. Did you present?
I defended.
Okay.
I did. I defended on the 23rd of April. So,
oh my goodness.
And I actually just found out today that you are officially a PhD, or you're officially a doctor that day. I thought that it was commencement. I was like telling everybody that it's not until May 15th, but it turns out I'm already, already a doctor. Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations. Yeah.
When I'm so happy that's over.
Exactly. What I'm finding, because I spent the majority of my career in the classroom, and then I've been teaching teachers online, professional development courses for teachers online for 5 years. And I'm finding it's so funny because I started teaching using Google Classroom right towards the end of my classroom time. And I found exactly what you're finding, like the kids who would be really, really quiet and I would never know they could talk. All of a sudden, when they could send me an email or send me a chat or whatever, they're like, hey, I have a question about number 3. What should I be writing here? But they would never raise their hand. And so it's really interesting, and I'm seeing this with my own children, is that one of my children is like loving this, like so happy to be home, so happy to not be going to school. And I have another child who's like, I don't want to do any work. It's not fair that I can't go to school and see my teacher.
It's the difference between an indoor cat and an outdoor cat, You just got one indoor cat and one outdoor cat. I am definitely an indoor cat, as much as I love the outdoors, obviously. But I honestly, I'm a little shy. I'm one of those people. I'd rather be, watching the presentation and be, and like really engaged or whatever. And when even in my classroom, I have a very student-centered classroom. Very. I am not the sage on stage. I think that they are, that it's their learning, and I'm just here to make sure they're doing it right.
Yes.
But it's amazing how we're all different, and it's amazing how this is bringing out how alike we are and how different we are at the exact same moment. This whole thing. So
for sure, yes, undoubtedly.
And there's like the people that are saying that all kids learn better this way.
No.
And the kids, it's never going to be a situation where all kids learn better in anything, like in one way. It just doesn't work that way,
There is no panacea for this. Jamie Lee was wondering, have you done chemical equations yet online? Because balancing chemical equations, holy smokes.
There's a couple of resources. Let me get, if maybe in your chat, if you can throw in your email, and Charity, you probably have it,
I
right?
actually already sent you the spreadsheet.
Okay, oh wait, I think I have it. So I will send you, I have actually a couple of resources for that. I just can't remember the name of it off the top. There's one specifically I'm thinking of. I'm pretty sure there's a couple of things on explorelearning.com. I'm pretty sure there's a really good one on there. And there was on CK12, I remember a simulation being on there for balancing. But there's another one that I'm thinking of. I can't place it right now, but I'll find it and I'll send you the email with it.
Perfect. And I'm actually just going to send you a picture of that question so
Awesome.
so that you have that. And
oh
then,
no, that's awesome because I need to read things.
And then Chris says that Flynn has live chemistry labs too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very helpful.
And the PhET simulations, they have a couple of really good ones for chemistry. I'm trying to think of, I don't remember which one that was. I'll find it. I promise.
Yes. And then everybody can think a good thought for us here at Inq-ITS, because we would love to get a grant to build, like, because I have just the wires of like 8 different chemistry labs, and I'm just, like, please let us build them. Please let us build them.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Well, I mean, it's so, especially the Inq-ITS platform, especially for things like physical science, is so great. I mean, all of the simulations are so awesome, especially for physical science. It's like, because it's just so much more visible. It's just so much more cause and effect easier. I mean, there's only one life science anyway. Biological sciences are always a little bit harder with the with simulations to have a good amount of them.
Yes, it's so funny. There's so much, particularly because we do assessment. It's so, like, it required getting really deep into understanding how to assess science practices in a way that we didn't have to think about physical science, because it's just a formula for the most part, right? We're just following
100%.
a formula. And I had to stretch my math skills. I had to learn how to do trig in Excel, because I had never had to learn how to do that before. But beyond that, it wasn't, you don't have to get really deep in the science practices, but when you start looking at biology, when you start looking at earth science, you have to get really, really deep into the science practices to understand them.
Well, you see the same thing when you grade the regencies. When you grade the chemistry or earth science regents, it's like, it's straightforward. Yeah, it's like just fill-ins, but they're straightforward. Then there's like living environment. It's like a paragraph that they write.
Yes. Which is the problem, right? Because you don't want to turn it into a reading.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it definitely makes it more complicated. But my degree is biology and chemistry, so I'm passionate about your fish. You're like having me. It's been over 10 years since I've been snorkeling in a coral reef, and you're just like killing me right now.
That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I don't want to keep everybody. If anybody has some questions, please type them in there. We'd love to talk about them.
And Jamie Lee, I will absolutely get you that other simulation that I'm thinking of. I have it like on a website, so I know I'll be able to find it quickly.
Perfect. You didn't mention, I found it really helpful for students to be able to go over something and use Screencastify, and then I have some teachers that are using Loom so that they talk about it, and kids can see their little picture in the corner. And
VoiceThread does that too. Yeah, VoiceThread also, you can use your voice instead, and it'll just show you a little avatar.
Just anything to connect. I mean, having the meetings, like last week we talked to Nancy, and Nancy was saying that she's reading to her students, and reading more like things that are appropriate for older students, just reading to them, and whether that's doing that via video or recording your voice, doing that just via a sound, if kids don't have good Wi-Fi, so that they could be able to get it in an easier fashion. but just having that connection, because my daughter had not actually physically seen or heard her teacher's voice in almost
Wow.
seen her or heard her voice or anything in almost 2 months. Like
Oh,
her
wow.
teacher had been dropping off packets because we don't because she doesn't have Wi-Fi or anything at her house, and so she'd just been dropping off packets, and my daughter was feeling so disconnected.
Of course.
And so we actually did a parade for Teacher Appreciation Week, and we went by the teacher's house, and my daughter, just seeing her teacher was just like a bawling mess, right? She was just so excited to just see her.
That's so great.
And that's a kiddo coming from a house that, I like to think is really well supported at home. But I'm just wanting to emphasize like how important the connection is that you have with your students.
Another great resource is Flipgrid. Because just for the exact reason of what you're saying is because you can have them make videos and then they can reply to each other's videos. My students loved it. I just honestly, I did a Flipgrid. I just said, tell us a fact about COVID-19 that you've learned since you've been home, just to give them something to say. And they just took off. They just started like having such great conversations via videos. So that's a really great resource for communication, just seeing them,
Yeah, maybe these kids, maybe your students, their next thing could be like creating TikTok videos, refuting these people saying that it's all just a hoax.
That's a great idea. Honestly, right now they're making infographics and PSAs about for public health. And but that's a really great one. Because I love doing those TikToks. Oh my God. That's another one. I still have not looked at that. Half the time I use these apps just to communicate with them. So I'll probably use it just to get them in. But that really would be a great idea. I love it.
Because I think particularly in New York, like your students would be like, are you kidding me with these people saying this is a hoax? Like, New York knows how very real this is. And so I can see them using the technology available to them to make something pretty poignant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if there are no more questions, we'll let you go. I just appreciate so much all of you. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for showing up for your students and what you do with them, because they need you and they need that connection.
Thank you everybody for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll send you nice comments later, Amanda, just so you can see them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful
Bye, everybody.
day.
Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Bye.